It's a Guillermo. Emil, Amok to you. God, how are you? It's Thursday. Thursday's usually a good day. A good day for the takeout. My takes on all things considerable here. The takeout. Still taken out. I haven't been to a restaurant in a while. Still, I'm still taking. I'm still going to places, and they say, "Oh no, we're not ready yet for you." Maybe it tells you what kind of restaurants I'm going to. But here we are in our gong closet once again with you. This is episode 267 of what I like to call the micro talk show. The micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs, the Asian American, actually fill in your ethnicity there. Or if you're not any of those two things, the aforementioned, you just be an ALL, all's the rest of you. You're welcome here on my takeout. We're here at 2 p.m. Pacific Live. So if you're here early, because I say, come at 1:50 because then people will be late. If I say come at 2 p.m. Pacific Live, they know, that's the start. And then I give people who come early that little something extra, because my father worked in restaurants and we had relatives who were waiters, and my father was a cook, but we knew waiters, and they would, at certain restaurants, they would bring the bill and they'd give you a little something extra with the bill, like, a little cookie or a little, lagniappe is what I guess that's sort of like the Frenchy Creole kind of thing. People, if you're from New Orleans, lagniappe. You say, oh, something extra. Yeah, we're down for that. So the show starts at 2 p.m. Pacific Live. Got a lot for you. There's a lot to talk about. But if you join early, we'll give you something extra. Like we'll give you the news scan. The news scan. I just look at the Post, Washington Post. I look at the New York Times and just see what's going on. The headline in the Post right now, as I speak, survivors offer hope amid rising death toll. And they're actually pulling people out of the Mariupol theater. There was an American who was killed in Chernihiv. That's sad. And I just had his age. His age is he's like 68, I believe. Born in 1954. But not a good sign. Another American dead. There was an American journalist killed the other day. The Fox photographer. Russian artillery kills 23 outside of Kharkiv, officials say. They're still trying to figure out how many people are in that Mariupol theater. They're pulling some people out, but there might have been maybe 1,300 there in Mariupol. Mariupol is the town in the south, the port city. I just remember watching news reports from that port city really before the invasion began. I was so sad that city's being obliterated now. And then Kharkiv is up to the north. Russian artillery killing 23, according to a Post story here. Slovakia is going to send Ukraine S-300 air defenses immediately, which is a good thing. This is like, we're going to talk about Zelensky's speech more. We talked about it yesterday on show 266. If you missed it, go to amok.com, and I put it up there because, see my honest response. I thought it was hard-hitting, right to the core of what it means to be an American. Talking about our dark days, right? He mentions Pearl Harbor. He mentions 9/11. And he needs help. So Biden and most of the West have insisted that they're not going to give him the no-fly zone. They're not going to close the skies. But essentially what Zelensky did was he made a request to Home Depot, and the United States is now giving him ways to do it himself. To do it yourself, close the skies. These S300s, they're going to make a difference. Because already there's some debate if giving Ukraine the MiG jets, right? They wanted some MiG jets from Poland, and the United States said no. We don't want that to happen. And the debate was, well, even if you increase the number of sorties, it's not going to make a difference. Better these S300s. So now, do it yourself. Close your own skies, which keeps that arm's length that Biden wants to have because he doesn't want World War III. But isn't it funny? I was reading the Wall Street Journal today, and essentially, one of the columnists there used a phrase that I've been using for the last 3 weeks. I said, we are in World War II.5, whether we like it or not. This is World War II.5. And I'm just glad to see. I mean, when I see a white media news organization in a columnist there use a phrase that I use, it's not validation. It's not even great minds think alike. It's just, well, it just says I was first. I was thinking that before they were thinking that. I was cleverer than them. Although, really, World War II.5. Nothing to be proud of. But here's the thing that I struggle with right now. I essentially am a dove. I'm a peacenik, right? Peace. I'm not a hawk. But as I look through what I'm thinking and saying, I'm becoming kind of hawkish in my old age. I don't know if I like that. But in a way, what are you going to do? I mean, this is sort of the problem when you confront a bully. What do? I think you got to call the bully's bluff. If the bully says, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Yeah? Well, this is what I'm going to do. And you stand up to the bully. You define the terms. You make the bully decide what he's willing or not willing to do. And usually, my experience with bullies, 7th grade, they back down. So I'm thinking about my bully, and I'm thinking, okay, when I stood up to my bully just sort of backed down and started seeing us as classmates, as not necessarily friends, but he stopped looking at me as someone he could push around. Does that work? Does that work here in these geopolitical circles? You got to stand up to Putin. I think Biden is taking the slow approach of, well, the slower we go, it's usually the best in terms of in terms of you don't escalate things. But look what happens. A lot of people die in the process. I'm just scanning here. It looks like there's just more people dying. We got another American died today. You've got let's see. New York Times, I was reading from the Post. New York Times says civilian toll worsens. See any numbers here on the front page. But you go slow and you pay a price in terms of lives. And not just in lives. Well, lives are bad, but in terms of, the physical structures that are being destroyed. And that's the thing about the Mariupol theater. It was acting as a shelter for hundreds of people. They've pulled out about 30, and there might be more underneath that rubble, but there's not enough manpower to go in and dig them out. This is why we got to act faster. We've got to act sooner. And people now of all stripes are coming forward saying, hey, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the strong guy, telling Putin, stop this war. I mean, I think we've come to this point where I think we get it, right? We're involved in this. We're involved in this war. I mean, I don't see anyone who is really like standing off and saying, look, not our business. I don't see anyone. Usually you see someone, saying, hey, look, let it happen over there. It's none of our business. I don't see anyone who's pro-Putin. I don't know anyone who's rooting for Putin. But, this is significant here. Because what Putin has done is he's united NATO. I mean, he's really been a shot at Geritol in the arm of NATO. And here in the United States, you see that speech, and you saw from the left, from the right, they were all standing up there cheering Zelensky. And now I see Netflix is going to add that Zelensky satire where he is a high school teacher who wins for president in his country. Yeah, it's going to be on Netflix. That's what a report I saw said. So here is the actor who had played a president, who's now is the president, who has united a divided America. That's something. The left, the right, they're all together. They were cheering Zelensky. And Biden he's cool. I'm not saying Biden should give the Ukrainians everything. He's given them like billions of dollars. I think the total budget figure is over 15 billion, and just this week alone, it's like 1 billion. Rounded off those numbers, and then all this military stuff. So I think he's going slower than some people say. Yeah, close the skies, give them the jets, give them. Hold on. In due time, Biden's already called. Yesterday, he started calling Putin a war criminal. No small deal. You call Putin a war criminal. The ICC. Did you catch this on the news? The guy who is the ICC's, the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor, Karim Assad Hamid Khan. And some of you viewers out there in my viewing audience asked me at the beginning, well, what is the UN going to do? What is the ICC going to do? Well, it takes time. They're starting now. They're gathering evidence. And here's the thing about the ICC. People don't know this about the ICC. The ICC is this independent body that investigates everyone. And you might say, oh, what kind of power do they have? They have the power of international shame. They have the power of consolidating the laws of the world, the global laws. And they can go after, they can issue these citations, they can find someone guilty. It's about responsibility and accountability on a world stage. And these guys are not beholden to any state. They're not state actors. So I was watching an interview that Kareem Assad Ahmad Amid Khan was, he's the chief prosecutor, gave to Anderson Cooper on CNN. And what Khan said was really interesting, because you have to understand this to get the significance of accountability by the ICC. He says we're all part of this global village. We're all linked, whether it's economic, political, diplomatic, education, travel, everything is intertwined. And that's why what we're seeing in Ukraine is no small thing. He says the court has the ability. We're not dealing with state responsibility. We're dealing with individual criminal responsibility, the personal responsibility and accountability of one's own actions. He says, I think we need to work together. We need to not lose hope, even in these desperately uncertain times. I mean, this is like, who is going to look at what Putin has done by blasting the Mariupol theater, by attacking a nuclear power plant, by shelling a maternity hospital? Who's going to wag the finger at Putin and say, this doesn't make sense? It's against the law in terms of, military custom, not to go after civilians, not to go after these kind of targets. And he's done it all. Gone after civilians, gone after these targets that were considered off limits. And then Khan got a little, he got personal in a way. He said, look, it just feels medieval and obscene. He says, we're going into space. We're doing space tourism. And yet we have this kind of war going on where we're attacking hospitals and schools. So he says, the only way this works, the ICC, is if there is this solidarity. He says this kind of solidarity, this is what you need in the world right now. And he says, because if we just use this idea of our solidarity as just a commodity that we can trade, he says the future is not good for us. And complacency is one of the great dangers of history, he said. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance, he said, quoting Churchill. We all need to be the gatekeepers. We can't leave it to others. It's too important. So this is what the prosecutor is saying. He's doing his investigations now, gathering evidence. So we know that down the road, there's going to be some kind of accountability. But how do we stop this now? This is where we, as Americans, if you're listening to this and you're in America, this is our way to press our representatives to say, yeah, we have to do all we can. I don't know. We are giving a number of different weapon systems. This S-300, I guess it is, right? You can be far, far away. Like, I don't know, like 50 miles away or something, I heard. And it can shoot down incoming missiles from about like 82,000 feet. I mean, this is better than a fighter jet. These S-300s. This is what Slovakia has, and they're going to send some to Ukraine. So they'll have their do-it-yourself, close the sky. But Slovakia wants to make sure that they get backfilled on the amount that they give. So here's the thing. You want to do a lot more for Ukraine. Republican senators are saying to Biden, do more for you. But they voted against $13.6 billion in aid for Ukraine. That's like wanting your cake and eating it too, right? I mean, I don't understand. And yet, I guess too much unity, not good enough, right? It's like, how can that be? The headline is dozens of GOP senators demand Biden do more for Ukraine after voting against $13.6 billion in aid for Ukraine. Oh, okay. I guess there'll always be some kind of disagreement. So that interview that I saw with the ICC prosecutor, that probably was the best thing I saw over the course of the 24 hours. There was something else. There was an interview with a Washington Post photographer, Heidi Levine, and just more. There are other photographers, other journalists out there. They're out risking their lives, documenting this, and the pictures that they showed of older people being helped out, of young people and their mothers separating from fathers who were prevented from leaving with them because they have to fight the war. It was so sad. And then there was another shot of a woman crying in front of a bloodied cover over presumably what was a body. It is hard to watch this war, but we are all watching. And now we need to take the kind of action that we can, which is to urge our congressmen who heard from Zelensky in that speech on Wednesday, we need to urge them to take action. Because we are interconnected. And this is that global village. Do you want to call it the global village? I mean, that's been the term. Global. I've heard global village since McLuhan, right? Marshall McLuhan. But I mean, I know a lot of people are not for globalization. Certainly the twice impeached former president was not for globalization. Some people say, would we be better off with Trump? If Trump were in office now, oh no. We would be, first of all, there would be no sanctions. There'd be no sanctions against Russia. Vladimir Putin would get anything he wanted from Donald Trump because, Donald Trump would like to build that tower in Moscow, even though now with sanctions and the economy looking like it will be in ruins for generations in Moscow and in Russia. I know a Trump Tower in Moscow doesn't sound so appealing. So I think the question now that people should ask is, let's go fast forward. Is there an exit strategy for Putin? And I mentioned the twice impeached former president because maybe that's where he could do some good. He could offer Putin exile in Mar-a-Lago. We can designated as the place of exile for him. He can live there with Trump, and they can ride horses bareback all they want. This is not without precedent. President Reagan, Vice President George Bush were enamored with the dictator of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos. And when Marcos fell in 1987, he was given safe pass. He didn't fight. That's one good thing about Marcos. He didn't gun down in war when the people rose up against him. He gunned down people like all throughout the years, like Benigno Aquino, a rival, and he jailed other people who were his adversaries, his political adversaries, but he did not kill people like Putin. But when he lost favor, he was given free passage to Hawaii. I got to think about that. That sounds like a great exit strategy, right? Hey, I terminated free speech. I declared martial law in the Philippines. I killed people. I looted the treasury. People hate me, and I got to go. You're going to give me free passage to the Philippines or to Hawaii? Great, I'll take it. Ferdinand Marcos, Imelda, and maybe a small amount of her shoes followed to Hawaii, and that's where they stayed in exile. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's it for Putin. Trump can offer Putin exile in Mar-a-Lago, and they could be like autocrats together in their own little village. And then Russia can go back to being normal. Ukraine can stop being bombed. And maybe we could just isolate Florida. Oh, no. There are good parts of Florida. Can't think of any right now, but there are good parts of Florida. Certainly not the governor's mansion. All right, so I'm thinking about this stuff. I'm thinking ahead because, we may want to try to figure out what is the way that Putin goes. And he's pretty much lost, right? The economy is going to hell. He's asking China for help. That's going to be interesting when Biden talks to President Xi. Later today, they're supposed to have a conversation. All right, so I need to talk about yesterday being our day that lives in infamy for Asian Americans. And I hope you had a good day. They had some people at Chinatown in New York. I asked my all-deaf friends how it went, and there was a nice crowd that was there, and then there were rallies around the country because the Asian American community nationwide, and we all come together for these big things, but this, I think, is a preview for what will happen in June. Because June is the 40th anniversary of Vincent Chin's killing. And I just think how, for a generation, Vincent Chin was the wake-up call. I mean, if you were here in the 80s, that means you just arrived, or you were just like myself. My parents came in the 20s. It's a long story. But I wasn't born till later. In the 80s, I was just coming of age. as an Asian American reporter. And it didn't really strike me, or it hit, but not like it's hitting now. Not because we didn't have the numbers. I mean, I think we were under 5 million. Because you got to remember that immigration before 65 was like non-existent. But post 65 it grew, and it takes a generation to see just by how much. And then you had a new generation, and you had subsequent immigration, and suddenly, you begin to have a community that to speak of. But now we have a community in 2022. We have a community that's 23 million, multiple generations, as well as new arrivals. It's a different Asian America. Some people are just trying to figure out who Vincent Chin is. They say, "Oh, yeah, I heard about Vincent Chin. I don't really know him." But for those people, those young folks, and people who've come subsequent to, say, 2010, these Atlanta spa murders are the wake-up call. So I think from here on, I mean, every year we should have these remembrances about the 6 women who died. We should know their names by heart, right? I mean, I try to name them whenever I can because, they represent us. March 16th, 2021, because the killer was going after Asians. So Zhao Zi, Emily Tan, Dao Yu Feng, Hyung Young Grant, Sun Chung Park, Sun Cha Kim, Young A.U. It's almost musical. You hear their names. I have their names like playing in a loop in my head so we don't forget them. Because they came to America seeking their opportunity, and they met this evil. I think what's interesting is that a year after, you've got a hate toward these women that is part of an overall hate that persists, that includes some 11,000 cases that the San Francisco State folks, their Stop AAPI Hate Project, has compiled. Everything from spitting to assaults to murder. And then, we have that instance just last week in Yonkers where a 67-year-old Filipino woman in Yonkers from behind is attacked. Now, it's one thing to just get, hit and run, right? But the perp, and he's been identified, he's been charged. The guy's name is Tamil Esco, 42 years old. He has a rap sheet. He now charged with attempted murder. And it will be treated as a hate crime, according to police. But the reports say he has served 42 months in prison for a 2010 stabbing, that he's had 5 months in an inpatient program for substance abuse after he pushed a woman through a plate glass window. That was last month. He pushed a woman. And so he's got all these. He's got experience. He's got experience in the criminal justice system. And yet they can't seem to help him become a productive member of the community. He only has become a threat. And the easiest target was this woman who lived in his building, who was waiting for an elevator. She had her back to him. He came into the closed circuit television view and pummeled her 125 times. Just flat out pummeled her. Spit on her. Called her slurs. Kicked her. So this is what we're dealing with. It continues, and there were stories all over in the media yesterday. People wondering, what are we going to do? How are we going to make things safe for Asian Americans? And they were primarily talking about women. And I know, I don't want to take anything away from the female victims. They tend to be the majority of those, or the largest number of those who've been attacked. But there also have been Asian American males, and generally over 60, their 70s and their 80s, beaten and killed. It's a community-wide issue, and I think it's good that you say, okay, what are we going to do about the women and protect them? But it's not just the perps aren't just going after the women. The perps are going after anyone perceived to be weak, going after anyone perceived not to be able to fight back. So while it's good to say, yeah, women are scared and we got to help them. I mean, this is according to these reports I was seeing throughout the media in terms of like how do we deal with this after 1 year. But it's not just it's all of us, all the members of the Asian American community. This is a real thing. We are under attack. And we have to be, I think we have to just, when we come together, work together, I don't know where the solutions are going to come from, except by being a community and standing up to this. How do you do that? Well, you support law enforcement efforts, you support community efforts, you support education efforts. The Stop AAPI Hate folks say education is going to do this. It's going to help. But what do you do when there are a number of people who feel that if you do an education effort, what you're doing is you're really teaching people how ugly and racist white people are? Well, the perps aren't always white people. Like I said, this is violence in general against Asian Americans, and the perps aren't always white. But we need education so we acknowledge and know this is around, and then slowly but surely we build up a trust so that Asian Americans, male and female, of a certain age, and some not of a certain, I mean, there are young Asian American women who are scared too. I'm just saying, most of the time it tends to be people who are targeted because they are older, male and female. We got to do something to protect them. Let's put on our thinking caps. But for a generation, I think this is an issue. This is an awakening. Because they see, hey, They're attacking our grandmothers. They're attacking our grandfathers. Or our fathers. Or our mothers. They're attacking us. So today, I should play my transition. That's like not heavy artillery. That's like a talk show transition. See? You know, if you're watching, that I am wearing a green colors. This actually is my performance shirt. I use this when I do my one-man shows. I have a one-man show coming up in April next month, and I'll tell you how to view it. It's not live, or it will be live, but it will be here. You might say, "Oh, Emil, it's going to be like this." No, well, no, it's going to be a little different, but I'll be talking to you. So today is St. Patrick's Day, and that's why I'm wearing green. It's a special day. It's a special day. And, maybe that's why there was a big story about this potato. A potato in New Zealand named Doug, which sounds like the beginning of a limerick. There was a potato in New Zealand named Doug. Not exactly the correct meter and rhyme, but it was a potato. Its name was Doug. They wanted to see if indeed it was the heaviest, largest, oldest potato around. It was like 17 pounds. That is a big, can I say effing? That is a big effing potato. And so they put it through the test, and guess what? It was almost like potato DNA. They discovered the potato was not a potato. It was, in fact, a gourd. It's a gourd. It's a tuber, but it's a gourd. It's not a potato. So they were all disappointed because they couldn't get the Guinness folks to give them you are the heaviest potato around. A 17-pound potato, that's a lot of potato. I mean, you'd need a big snake to tackle that potato. If it were an Irish potato and you had, St. Patrick out there chasing away the snakes. And the potato, this was a New Zealand potato, though. So the potato, this is a true story. It was in today's Wall Street Journal, and I was just astonished by the size. You look at it, and it's kind of like if you can imagine babies in a fetus, but like twins or like triplets all in one. But now a fetus would be like, how much would a fetus weigh? If it triplets, you had 3 6-pounders, that'd be 18 pounds. That's like the potato. The potato was like 17. It looks like the picture they showed looked like a fetus of like 3 beings wrapped together. Only they weren't human beings, they were potatoes. Anyway, disappointment in New Zealand because they weren't potatoes, they were gourds. So a St. Patrick's disappointment in New Zealand. But I celebrate today, and I'm not drinking, although it may sound to you like perhaps I am. But I am celebrating today because on my wife's side, there's the Irish. And so my kids are Filipino and Irish. They're Iripinos. And I too, well, I'm full Filipino. But I did not grow up with a grandmother. I never saw my grandparents. Imagine that. My parents were old enough to be grandparents. But I got them by the time they got around to having kids because of the racism that existed. they started a family. They could not bring their parents here. So I never knew my grandparents on my father's side, never knew my grandparents on my mother's side. That's like two sets. I just had no idea. I saw pictures, sepia tone pictures. That was the best. But my mother and father, when they got married and they lived in San Francisco, they lived in the south of Market, where Filipinos and other immigrants tended to gather, and they lived in an apartment next to an Irish family, the Pierces, Daddy Pierce and Mommy Pierce. I don't know their first names. I just know it might have been Jim and Mary. I don't know, but I only knew them as Daddy Pierce and Mommy Pierce. At least that's what my mother called Daddy Pierce and Mommy Pierce. And so to me, that's what they were. But in fact, they were my grandparents. And these grandparents, they were good. They sufficed. They would come on my birthday, and they were not Filipino. They were these. Daddy Pierce looked like a vicar. White hair, skinny, tall. Mommy Pierce, she looked like, she was heavy, but maternally heavy. And she had an apron. She always had an apron. She always looked like she was wearing an apron because she was always cooking. And that, in fact, was what made me feel Irish. We would go there to have dinner, and she would prepare these fabulous feasts. And she told my mom how to make corned beef and cabbage. Oh, that's the way Mommy Pierce makes it. Oh, it wasn't like Filipino soup. It's like Irish soup with the. Actually, I think my mom tried to make corned beef and cabbage with Spam. Oh, we did not have corned beef, but we have Spam. Spam and cabbage. Good. Came on. But the deal, the meal that was special, of course, Thanksgiving. Mommy Pierce just lorded it on. The mashed potatoes, the gravy, the side dishes, the yams, the green beans. Green, of course. Irish green beans, the breads, the soda breads, the turkey. Oh, the turkey. Look, I'm vegan, but look, this was my past. Turkey. We didn't have that. I think if we didn't go to Mommy Pierce's house, we probably would have had fish that night. That would have been the if they had a hook, they would eat fish, those pilgrims. That's what my dad would say. Mommy Pierce. And of course, the thing that got me, that made me feel really Irish, is when Mommy Pierce would greet me at the door when we came in for Thanksgiving, and we were all like, "Oh, we haven't eaten in 5 days. We're preparing for the feast, Mommy Pierce." And she would look at me and stare me in the eye and say, "Oh, Emil. Emil? I am not Emil. Emil, but I'm here for Emil. So for you, Mommy Pierce, I am Emil." It was like my Irish baptism. And then we'd eat all afternoon. And then this is typical, right? You just eat on Thanksgiving, and then you're so full, and it's I can't walk. I'm just going to sit here for 3 hours. And then we woke up. It was 8:00 and time to tiptoe home. That was Thanksgiving at the Pierces. My my Irish baptism. And of course, things, on St. Patrick's Day, that was always a big deal because they're the Pierces, the Pierces. Lola, she was not Mommy Pierce. She became Lola Pierce to me. My Lola. All right, so I just had to share that story on St. Patrick's Day because I'm not going to go out and I'm not even going to drink a non-alcoholic Guinness because Guinness is locale enough. Guinness is enough of a health. Guinness is pretty healthy, and when I still drank about a year ago, I would drink a lot of Guinness. I just loved it. It was like, oh, bread, liquid bread. But now now when it comes to alcohol, I'm somewhat equanimous. But I will lift up a toast to the Irish today because, like I said, I'm Mommy Pierce. She said I was Irish. I think that's what she said. I mean, when she called me Emil, I think that was it. And so here we are. Some people say, Emil, those of us didn't have paternal Filipino grandparents or know their names. Luckily, you had photos of your grandparents. Oh, that is so true. We have Juanita here chiming in on the chat. If you're on the chat, you can chime in on the chat. Only on Facebook. But she says, some of us weren't lucky, right? Some of us didn't have paternal Filipino grandparents or know their names, but I had photos. And that's true. I had the sepia tone photographs. And I thought, oh, that's funny skin color. I didn't know sepia. What happened? Did they leave these out in the sun? Did the cat do something to this? No, Emil, that's sepia tone. Sepia, your cat? No, that's a sepia tone. Oh, okay. Anyway, so I had Irish grandparents. Mommy Pierce. Emil. Do I look like an Emil to you? Emil. I can hear the voice. There we were. They lived on San Carlos Street in the Mission, which is now pretty gentrified. When you get tired of Valencia Street, oh, I don't want to eat on Valencia Street today. If you're a San Francisco gourmand, you say, oh, I just ate in Valencia Street the other day. Let's try San Carlos Street, just a block up. San Francisco has changed. That's why I appreciate it from afar. I like being away. I mean, they've destroyed my beloved Dolores Park, turned it into a haven for the tech folks who overpay for their apartments and have no place to go. So they say, oh, let's go out to the park. See, that's not the way we did it. The park was for kids. The park was for kids to play football and soccer. It wasn't for the techies to go and say, well, we just paid $3,000 for an overpriced flat that has no room and no yard. That's why we're out here. I know. San Francisco. And there we were on 20th Street. That walk down 20th Street between Church and Dolores. That is probably the most underrated, beautiful view, or the most underrated tourist walk in San Francisco. Just to go from Church to Dolores and then back. It's not a bad walk. And then you see everything. You see the skyline, you see the bay. And Emil Guillermo, tourist tip for those of you visiting San Francisco. All right. Regular listeners, viewers of this show know that at this point, this is when we talk about our loving self-compassion, our meditative. This is our meditative moment, and I mention this because Suni Lee, you know Suni Lee, right? The Olympian. This week, she said that she was not feeling up to her season as a gymnast, where she scored like several tens, perfect scores. But she was feeling, after the Olympics, she was feeling like she wasn't good enough. She was feeling like she wasn't worth it. Honestly, this is Suni, the Olympian. Now, we're not even talking about Dancing with the Stars. We know she wasn't good enough for that. Just kidding. But she wasn't. She was voted out. But the Olympics, gymnastics, this is her thing, right? So it was kind of astonishing to read this week on ESPN how she was feeling the imposter syndrome. So this is our imposter syndrome corner here. You come here, just fast forward throughout every show. We'll do it here at the end. Come fast forward to the end. And this is the antidote. If you don't feel enough, if you don't feel quite worthy, take this hand, put it here. Take this hand, put it here. And then give it a squeeze. I'm telling you, it works. It's called loving self-compassion. Give yourself a break. Squeeze. That's all it takes. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time, Professor Dan, tomorrow, we're going to talk about sex workers. I know it. I feel it.